Brenda, how did you find carnivore?
I found carnivore a couple years ago. My journey began in 2019 when I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And at the time we were shocked. Like I I was an endurance athlete, runner, vegan, like I definitely thought I was doing all the right things. And when I got told, that I have a brain tumor, it just floored me. So we didn't actually, because I thought I was eating the correct ways, the vegan and all this stuff. And all the doctors were like, you're doing all the right stuff. Um, so it took, um, my symptoms started in February of 2019, and it took until November of 2019 for them to even do an MRI. So like no doctor really would believe me actually. Because they were just like, oh, you're a woman, whatever. It's just like go on, antidepressants and all this other stuff. You have anxiety, whatever. And the one doctor that actually was like, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. So he ended up ordering an MRI from brain to tailbone. And we were convinced that it was something wrong with my back because my right leg would intermittently go out. Like when I would go for a long run, I would get like what I call dead leg, but only on my right leg. And so it was interesting because it was like, we were just so focused on it being something wrong with my back that when we got the diagnosis of it's a brain tumor, your back is fine. There's nothing wrong with your back. That was like a complete shock. So we did a couple surveillance MRIs just to kind of track it because that was the first. They didn't have a baseline MRI. So the neurosurgeon was like, let's do a couple MRIs and see if it's growing, what it's doing, that kind of stuff. So by the third MRI, the tumor itself hadn't really grown, but the information had changed. So basically, he was like, even though it hasn't really grown, there's new information out that watching and waiting on these type of tumors that we think you have, there's a huge malignant potential. So it's better to get it taken out now than wait. So, and then unfortunately in 2020, the pandemic hit. So I had my surgery in September of 2020. And, my husband couldn't be there. He had to drop me off at the front doors. And I mean, that was scary. Like that was a horrible situation. So I had my craniotomy, and literally 36 hours after my surgery, I was home. It was so quick. So that was shocking. And I don't know if it was because it's the pandemic or I was just doing so well. I did develop aphasia after the surgery. So I could understand everybody, but I couldn't communicate back. So they sent me home like that, but they sent me home where they were like, oh, well, we'll set you up with speech therapy. And then of course I never got it because it was the pandemic. So there was no speech therapy until I think it was my first appointment with speech therapy would have been February of 2021. And I'm like, it's September. This will be permanent by then. So my husband came up with the amazing idea of doing Duolingo, Spanish. And then that actually taught me, my brain rewired. And I didn't really learn much Spanish, but I relearned English. Like I figured out how to talk again. So that was amazing. So 30 days into Duolingo, I was able to communicate. I mean, not 100%, but I was able to communicate way better than I was 30 days ago. So that was awesome. And then, I think it was October, I had my follow-up appointment, and that's when we found out that the pathology came back that it was a low-grade cancer. So they immediately, they said, you have cancer and you have an appointment with the radiation oncologist tomorrow and the medical oncologist the next day. So they didn't really give us any time to process. It was just like standard of care. So, and, we didn't know any better. So we went along with it. So I did 6 weeks of radiation in conjunction with oral chemotherapy. And then I did, it ended up doing 6 months of maintenance chemo. In Tucson, they wanted me to do a year, but in the middle of my chemo, we switched over to the Mayo Clinic. And, the doctor at my neuro-oncologist at the Mayo Clinic was like, you had a full resection. I don't know why they want you to do maintenance for a year. You don't need it. 6 months is plenty. And so I was really relieved because I was so sick. I mean, I couldn't even, so usually what they do is they do a lower dose of the oral chemo while you're doing the radiation, and then they up the dose to do the maintenance. Well, the first time I took the increased dose for the first maintenance, I literally felt like I was going to die. Like I felt so poisoned. And I immediately called, my medical oncologist and I said, I can't handle this dose. You need to go back to the dose that I've been doing for 6 weeks because I can't handle it. And she begrudgingly was like, okay, I mean, it's not going to be as effective, but okay. And I'm like, seriously, I literally feel like I'm going to die. So either you lower my dose or I'm not doing it. I mean, and so that's why she was like, okay. And that was a whole nother nightmare where she was a flighty doctor. I was in appointments with her doing checkups and she wasn't even paying attention. She was like rumbling through paperwork and all this stuff. And there was so many times where her nurse would call me and I figured out the dosage that I needed based on my body weight and, that whole thing. And there was like 2 different times where it was the wrong dose. One of the times the dose was so high, it would have basically killed me, like literally killed me, because it was like for a 200-pound man. And so that's when my husband started looking into it, and that's when we switched over to the Mayo Clinic. Because we were like, oh, well, the Mayo Clinic is for the sick people. And it was like, oh, wait, I'm the sick person. I'm the one that the Mayo Clinic's for. So, so we transferred our care there and it was going really good. I, finished my chemo and, toward the end, my blood work was, my, white count was starting to get low and all this stuff. And during that time, all the vaccines rolled out and stuff. And so my neuro-oncologist said, I really do think you need to take the vaccine because you're vulnerable. And I was like, I don't want to. And he goes, well, I really think you need to because, you're at such a vulnerable state. The COVID virus could kill you. And so I begrudgingly took it. Which I really didn't have effects at that time. It just, made me kind of just feel, I think I just felt so crappy anyway that it didn't really make a difference. So that went smooth. I had very good MRIs from, the end of treatment all the way until 2025, 2024. And my maintenance MRI, which I had in June, was I happened to get the report before I see the doctor. I do see the doctor like 4 hours after I get the MRI, so I do see the doctor on the same day. But I do have the portal, and the report pops up usually before I see the doctor. So we were going to lunch because we had a gap, and I was like, and I had a mammogram that same day. So I was like, oh, well, that's probably my mammogram results. So I'll just, look at that. Didn't even think that it could have been my MRI results. And I read it, and it was like line 1, left frontal lobe resection, stable, typical. It said it's the same. It's stable. Everything looks good. Line 2, new tumor, unrelated. And I was like, I was floored. And they said, potential vestibular schwannoma. And I'm like, what? That I was just I was just disheartened. It was just like, I don't even know. So I was kind of like, should I tell my husband? Should I not? Should I just let him enjoy the lunch? And then I was like, no. And so I just handed him the phone, and he read the report, and he was just like, okay, well, we're going to see, the doctor in, a couple hours. So let's just wait and see what he has to say and not overthink it and get worried. And I was like, okay, easier said than done, but, we'll do that. And even my neuro-oncologist was like, I have no explanation. Like this is floored the whole team. Like, we don't even know how this happened. We don't know why it happened. And then the report said that it was compared to the January report. So the tumor was found in the January report, but we were never told that the tumor was there. So in January, when I went there, they said, everything looks good. You're clear, enjoy your life. And I went to a brain tumor gala in New York for like fundraising. And I shared a room with my girlfriend, and she was like, we were having a great time. And then one of the nights we were there, I had the worst dizzy spell, and I had to crawl to the bathroom, and I was like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's wrong with me. And like, everything just got super wonky. Well, after we got back, so that was in June, and my MRI was in July. And that's when they found this vestibular schwannoma, which that's a huge symptom of that. And I had a lot of like disease spells before that, but I was like, I'm perimenopausal. I was just my MRI was fine, supposedly. So I just was like, yeah, I'm perimenopausal. No big deal. Like this is life now. But when we saw that it was compared to the January MRI and that it had grown by 50%, that we were just like, what the actual hell? Like, why did you not tell us? And apparently the July MRI was AI assisted. So AI picked up the tumor, and then the radiologist said, oh, and then he looked at my January MRI and realized that the radiologist had missed it. So that was very disconcerting for us, because it was like, we rely on you to look at my entire brain because of my previous cancer. And so that was insane. So then they were like, oh, well, it's still small. So let's just watch and wait. You have your hearing still. because that's one of the main symptoms of a vestibular schwannoma is you just lose hearing. But I had all the other symptoms. I had dizziness, I had nausea, I had balance issues. I started falling more often. So when I was trail running, I was falling like a lot more trail running. And they're like, "Oh, it's too small to create those problems." I'm like, "Yeah, that's what they told me with my first tumor, that my leg issues had nothing to do with my first tumor. But when it was removed, my leg issues and my numbness and the whole right side numbness went away 24 hours after it was removed." So it's like, no, you're wrong. So they were trying to convince me to do radiation on the tumor. And I'm like, I feel like this tumor is probably from the radiation the first time because it's left side. So left side radiation, left side new tumor. So I don't want to do radiation. And I had a very dear friend who had radiation on her benign meningioma. And she ended up 5 years later, it was 4 or 5 years later, with a cancerous tumor. And it was directly related to the radiation that she did on the benign tumor. And so I was like, no. And so I told them that story, and they were like, oh, okay. And they kept saying, well, we don't want to do the surgery because you have hearing. We don't want to do the surgery. And I'm like, I don't care if I lose my hearing and I gain my life back. Because at this point, had so many dizzy spells, I couldn't really get off the couch. So I went from, trail running and being really active and hiking and, doing all this stuff to having massive dizzy spells. So my life was becoming ruined, from this second tumor. So finally, I talked to the neurosurgeon, and then I talked to the ENT surgeon. So you have to have 2 different surgeons for this type of surgery. And the ENT surgeon, he was amazing. So both of the surgeons were absolutely amazing. And they decided, okay, we're going to try to do a hearing preservation surgery. And it was successful. I mean, I still have hearing in my ear. It's not as good. It definitely declined, but it has stayed stable since the surgery. Like, it declined a little bit after the surgery once the swelling went down and all that stuff. But it hasn't declined since. So, and I mean, I'm going next month, no, 2 months from now, to get another hearing test. But I've been doing Apple has the ear pods, and they had the hearing, and it's like dead on accurate. So I did a hearing test at the Mayo Clinic, and then I literally did the Apple hearing test, and it was almost the same results. So I'm like convinced. So, and I can hear. So that was really good. I mean, that was a rough surgery because they had to cut, like, the tumor is growing on your vestibular nerve, which is your balance nerve. And so I had to relearn how to walk. I had to relearn how to balance. And I still have, especially at night or if I'm really tired, I still have balance issues. So, and I thought I was over it recently until we were doing a big backyard project. We're doing this major retaining wall project. And it was like a 3-day push, and I was getting really tired, and I just kept falling. And, my husband, of course, he makes light of it. So we like to joke about these bad situations. And so he goes, "Hey, you can't park there," every time I'd fall. And so I was like, yeah, I know. But no, in between the first brain tumor surgery and the second brain tumor surgery, I was doing great. I mean, I was active, but I was still vegan. And I ended up in between having this very scary, I thought I had a stroke because my whole entire left side went numb. And my husband rushed me to the hospital, and they were just like, they couldn't find anything. They did scans, they did everything that they did a stroke protocol and no stroke. And it took one doctor at the Mayo Clinic was like, have you ever had your B12 checked? Because she knew I was a vegan. And I said, not that I'm aware of, no. So she checked my B12 and it was critically low. My B12 was it was like 103. So very, very low. And she's like, you need B12 shots and all this stuff. So I kept trying to go to my primary care doctor to get B12 shots. And it was impossible to get into him for the B12 shots. So my husband, again, looked it up and found ones that you can dissolve under your tongue that were the same dosage as the shot. And so, and it was Amazon the next day. So I got those, took one dose, and the next day felt so much better. And so I was like, ooh, maybe I need to start eating meat again. Because I've been basically vegan off and on my entire life. So it's like, but every time it was about a 5-year gap, and then I'd have to start eating meat again. So I had to start doing omnivore. So I was omnivore for a little bit, and then we discovered the paleo diet. So he went paleo first because he had a lot of, he had chronic bronchitis and all this stuff. Well, it turned out he had a dairy allergy. So he improved a lot on the paleo diet, and it was kind of like, but I was addicted to sugar. Like, I am a sugar addict. And so I was kind of just like, oh yeah, I half did it, And then once we started learning about, we kept asking the doctors, like, how can we prevent this cancer from coming back? Oh, you're doing everything right. You're eating healthy. You're doing everything right. You're just not lucky. You're just unlucky. Like, there's nothing you could do about it. And so we started going down the rabbit hole, and we discovered Thomas Seyfried. And I was like, there is something that can do about it. So I started going more keto and started kind of doing that. And then I, again, was YouTube rabbit hole and I discovered Dr. Berry and Dr. Chafee and Dr. Baker and all these. And so then I was like, if keto is good, carnivore is better, because that takes away all of the, anti-nutrients. And because I was such a sugar junkie, I couldn't even, I was trying to eat fruit being kind of keto-ish, but it would start off, 10 blueberries, and then, and then 20 blueberries, and then a blueberry and an apple. And, and it was, it just creeped in. And so it's like, I either have to be completely no fruit, or I'm all about, So that's when I started looking into carnivore. But it was really hard for me because I grew up in the 80s. So low fat, no fat, saturated fat's bad, all
egg white omelets.
Yeah, egg white. Yes, egg white omelets. And my mom, she was like, everything had to be fat-free. So, we would sit down, us kids would sit down with a big tube of those Twizzlers, fat-free, and we would just be eating them while watching TV. And then she'd be eating the Snackwell cookies, or I would be eating Snackwell cookies. And So it was just one of those things where it's like, well, it's fat free, so it's got to be healthy, right? Because that's what they tell you. Lo and behold, it's full of sugar. So I really did struggle mentally with going to just all meat. But the day I decided that I'm just going to be like, you know what? No, this is for my health. That first ribeye was amazing. It was delicious. And I now eat way more meat than my husband. And he tried to do it with me. Like, he was trying to support me. And so he did it with me, but he did not thrive like I did. I mean, I did the 90 days, and I was like, the first time around, my digestion improved within 3 days. And I was like, okay, I always thought I was just I permanently had this like pooch. And all of a sudden, 3 days into carnivore, I had a flat stomach. I've never in my life had a flat stomach. And it was like, okay, that's interesting. And I just started shedding weight that I thought was healthy weight, but it just fell right off of me. And so then I did it for 90 days, and I joined Dr. Berry's community, his proper human diet community. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of people with like cancers and that kind of stuff. That community is more, they need to lose a lot of weight. They have type 2 diabetes. They have major heart disease. They've had strokes, that kind of stuff. So I was like, I don't really feel like I fit in to the community. So I did asked a question on, I think Dr. Berry has this like AI bot. It's AI Berry basically. And so I said, give me a list of metabolic doctors in my area. And no one was in my area. Like there was not a single metabolic doctor. I think there was only like 2 in the state, and that was it. And then I saw Dr. Lensix, and I was like, he sounds like he would be a really good doctor, and he does video visits. So I Google searched him, and his website pops up, only accepting Arizona patients. And I was like, oh, awesome. I'm an Arizona patient. So I looked up his address, and his office is right down the street from me. So he is in my hometown, which my hometown is very tiny. And so I called him up, and we had this amazing, it was like a 3-hour first visit. He asked me questions that no other doctor had ever asked me. And I was just blown away. So then I was like, I want you to do a full blood panel. I've done 90-day carnivore. I'm really still worried that, I'm damaging my body from eating only meat. So he goes, oh yeah, I'll do all the blood tests. So he tested everything from, my standard, the standard tests to fasting insulin to like everything. And everything looked really good, except for I again got my test results before I was able to talk to him. And my LDL was like 3 times the amount it was when I was vegan. But all my other blood work, like my fasting insulin, when I was vegan, it was 7. And that it was like 2.1 at that point. And my fasting glucose when I was vegan was 92 or 93. and it was 71. So, I mean, everything else trended, and my HDL went, like, it also tripled. So my HDL tripled. My triglycerides stayed basically the same. They didn't change at all because they were already low, and it was like, oh my gosh, I have to back off on eating meat. So then I went back to keto. Even though, he talked to me and he said, don't even look at your LDL. That marker doesn't matter. It's a single marker. Everything else, you're metabolically healthy. But my little 80s, brain, no fat, low fat, was like, nope, I need to kind of back off. And so I went back to kind of paleo keto for after that. And I was okay. Like it wasn't bad, but I gained all that bloat back. My stomach immediately just went back to bloated. And then I started having, it was September last year, September 2025. I started having all these weird symptoms. And I was like, first thing you do when you're a brain cancer patient is my brain cancer's back, or I have another a third brain tumor, And so I immediately was like, contacted my neuro-oncologist, and I was like, something's not right. I am becoming fatigued. Got to a point where I would get daily migraines. By the end of the day, I would have a massive migraine on the side that my recent surgery was on. And every night, like, I would be basically spending most of the night in the bathroom with massive migraine. And so they pushed my MRI to December instead of March, like it was supposed to be. So, but then I saw a neurologist because my neurosurgeon was like, you need to go to a neurologist and see what's going on. And the neurologist was like, I think you might have a vascular issue. Like you might have a blood clot or something, probably from your surgery. Because what was happening was if my pulse went up to 100 or 105, I would get all this pressure in my head. I couldn't bend over. I couldn't do, I literally, again, got to a point where I was stuck on the couch. And so, of course, I'm like, oh, great. I broke my body because it did this carnivore keto thing. And, again, it was just that little voice in the back of your head, right? And so, in the meantime, I went to Dr. Lensix, who's my new primary care doctor. And I told him the whole story, and he's like, something's not right. Like, you've had clean scans for, aside from the new tumor, but your brain cancer has been clean since the surgery. He's like, something doesn't seem right. And he's like, have you had your spike proteins tested? And I said, I don't even know what that is. And he goes, well, you said you were vaccinated. And I said, yeah, against my will, but yes. I didn't want to get vaccinated. And he goes, let's just test it. And I'll test, if you have, he did the nucleocapsins, or however you say it, where that's the natural immunity. And then he also did the spike protein measurement itself in my blood. And he goes, we'll just see what it comes back. Well, that blood test came back. My spike protein level was over 25,000. The limit to the test is 25,000. So it just said greater than 25,000. So I don't know how much spike protein I have in my body. And he's like, wow, that, and he goes, when was your last vaccine? I said, 2021. And he's like, holy wow. And then I said, oh, and by the way, I was looking for something else, and I came across my journal, my log book, and my first seizure. So I started having seizures a little over a year after my first brain surgery. And I had asked my neuro-oncologist, is that normal to have seizures that far out from surgery? And he goes, oh, well, yeah, with your tumor type, you could have, and I'm like, but I don't have the tumor anymore. It was fully resected. So that never made sense to me. And then I looked at my logbook, and I had gotten my I think it was the second vaccine, and 3 days later, I had my first seizure. So I asked my neuro-oncologist, could those be related? And he's like, no. Then I talked to, my new doctor, Dr. Lensix, and he goes, yeah, that can explain everything. I was so confused as to why you were having seizures that far out of surgery. And he goes, that makes a lot of sense. So then he told me about this detox protocol that, and he actually did an interview. He has a podcast. It's called Life's Best Medicine. I actually did an interview with him recently, and my interview with him came out yesterday on YouTube. But he also did an interview with Dr. Peter McCullen. I don't know if you've heard of him. But he is the doctor who formulated this herbal supplement called the Ultimate Spike Detox. And so my doctor is like, I have no financial interest in it, but it won't do anything against your medicines that you're taking. So why don't you just try it? And I was like, anything to help me feel better. So I started taking it, and within a week and a half, it was like a light switch just clicked, and I slept solid for the first time since September. That whole night, I woke up feeling refreshed. I mean, I got to a point where I literally, trying to make the bed, I felt like I was going to pass out just by putting the fitted sheet over the mattress. I literally felt like I was going to pass out. And it went from that to, I'm back to trail running. I'm back to, doing all the housework. I'm doing all the cooking, doing this backyard project, which is insane. And it was as simple as this herbal supplement, herbal combination, detoxing my body from the spike proteins. And I also incorporated, because he also did a interview with Dr. Jessica Rose, and she was one of the scientists that was directly involved in testing the vaccines. And she said she was blown away by what was being, you'll have to watch that interview. But so she said that the best way to detox is to sweat it out. So I immediately was like, we're buying a sauna. So we went and investigated, and we found the sauna pod that was non-toxic and all this stuff. And I sauna almost every single day now. And I started the detox December 23rd, and I had my MRI. So they wanted to do an MRA, MRI, and an MRV to check all of my brain, and then the vascular system of my brain. Everything was clear. There was nothing in my MRIs. And when I had my appointment with my neuro-oncologist, she was just like, this is an amazing scan. And I would be very comfortable with going 8 months till your next scan. So my next scan isn't until September. And she said, even that one spot that we thought was residual tumor from your second surgery shrunk and is now represents more like just scar tissue. So we're not even worried about that anymore. And I don't tell the Mayo Clinic that, you know, I'm even meat-based because they're still in the plant-based world. So I just kind of giggled. I'm like, yeah, it shrunk. Haha. You know, like, so then that kind of helped convince me to go back to really trying at least the keto. So I was doing hardcore keto, less than, 20 grams of carbohydrates per day, total carbohydrates, not net. But then I started getting that bloat again. And it was gradual. And I was just like, I am not comfortable. I mean, I just am getting more and more bloated, and I wasn't eating that many vegetables. It was, small portions of vegetables, mostly meat. But the vegetables I was eating, I was like, so I told my husband, I said, you know what? I need to go back to carnivore. And he goes, you do whatever you feel is best for you. And literally, I've been taking notes all this time just so I can go back and look at it myself. And I went back to carnivore on March 20th, and I weighed myself. I was 124.2. My waist was 28.75 inches. And by April 6th, I didn't lose that much weight. I went down to 121. Now I'm 119. But my waist dropped to 26.5 inches. That's how much bloat I had. And I just I'm like, I feel so much better. I told my husband, I was like, I don't even know if I want to go back to, keto or anything. I'm like, I'm open-minded to it. And I still drink coffee because coffee. But that's the only thing that's not carnivore, So now I'm just like, I just want to feel the healthiest I can feel. And I don't want to be in this little clique or club or, I'm not trying to do any of that stuff. I'm just trying to be as healthy as I can be. So that's my story in a nutshell. It's like, yeah.
Wow. And so at this stage, how are you eating day to day? Of course, coffee, but yeah, me too. Someone's coming for my carnivore card as well. But like, apart from that, like, what does the day look like?
So for me, I definitely this time around, I'm doing it smarter. I think I was under eating the first time, because I lost way too much weight the first time. So this time around, I have breakfast, which is usually a 1/3 pound patty, like ground beef patty, and 2 or 3 eggs, depending on how active I'm going to be that day. And so that's breakfast. And then lunch is usually like a little chuck steak or something like that, or another ground beef patty or sardines. So those are kind of my rotation meats. Once in a while, I'll want like a chicken leg or a chicken thigh or, but bone in, skin on, that kind of stuff. But they haven't been tasting that good to me lately. So I'm sticking more to the ruminants and fish and that kind of stuff. And then dinner is usually 3 different, it's either a ribeye, like a big, huge ribeye, or a chuck, something, because we get the big chuck rolls at Costco, and he cuts them up into, and I pack them, and then we have a big freezer. So we get the big ribeyes, the cryo pack ribeyes and the cryo pack. Um, so yeah, or I do, like tonight I'm having salmon, and then like twice a week I'll have pork chop for my B1, because pork chops are like the highest in the B1 vitamin of all the animals you can eat. So I really want to, and that's the thing, is I'm also really figuring out and learning where the vitamins and minerals come from versus just eating meat. You know what I mean? Like the first time around, I was like, I'm just doing carnivore, so anything that looks like meat, I'm gonna eat. So I was eating a ton of bacon, a ton of chicken, a ton of, that kind of stuff. And now I'm like, okay, let's focus on nutrients, which is the most nutrient dense. And when we can afford it, I do lamb. I really love lamb, but it's very expensive right now. I mean, beef is very expensive too, but that's why we get it at Costco with the bulk pricing. But yeah, that's my typical day. And then I just, I drink water, and like my water right now has electrolytes in it. So I make sure, and then I'm taking I guess that's not carnivore. So the herbal supplement I'm taking for the detox, I take that in the morning on an empty stomach. And then I take like magnesium and that kind of stuff to help with everything. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
Right, and your sleep has continued to be consistently good?
Yes. Oh yeah, it's aside from my little dog waking me up, she's a little demanding dog. But no, my sleep is amazing. And I actually had a conversation. So I got put on my migraine medication, nortriptyline, and because I had to do something about these migraines in the interim. And once the detox kicked in, my migraines started lessening. And then I was able to be more active, and so then my neck tension was getting better. And then of course the inflammation was probably also going down, because for a while there I got to a point where I'm like, I don't really care what I eat, because I don't feel good anyway, so might as well just eat what I want. So I got into the kind of that loop. So I started eating more fruit. I started eating occasionally like gluten-free cookies, that kind of stuff. And so I was bad for a while. Um, but yeah, so now I'm tapering off. So I just last night went down to, I have to take the liquid form because the capsule is lactose based, and I cannot do dairy at all. So I just tapered down to 5 milliliters from 10. And so that's good. And I'm like, I want to get off this stuff. I don't want to be on it, because it's affecting my resting heart rate. It's affecting a lot. And my vision. And so my vision's blurry from the medication. So I'm like, I want to get off of it. I don't even like taking meds anyway. So
Mm. And how is your running now? Are you still able to get out there?
yeah. So I've decided, I was running ultras, like 35 miles, 55 Ks, that kind of stuff. And I really thought about it, did some research, and was like, maybe that's also contributing to my metabolic health. Like, it's damaging my metabolic health. So now I run usually a little over 3 miles or a 5K, and that's it on the trail. And I don't run, I run maybe 3 days a week, if that, just to be out there. I hike with my dog and my husband almost every morning. So, and then I'm going to start rucking. So I have the weighted the weighted vest. So I'm going to start rucking again. I was rucking back when I was training for my ultras, and then I stopped rucking, and now I have all the stuff, so like I might as well start rucking again.
Yeah, and when you say, but it was bad for your metabolic health, you like just the endurance required, it's
Y-
just kind of
Yeah,
destroying
and
muscle or something, or
yeah, so and there's a lot of new research coming out that actually you get kind of mitochondrial damage when you exert yourself for too many hours, and especially running. Cycling too, but especially running. And it can actually do the reverse of your cardiovascular health. It can actually start doing damage to your cardiovascular health. So, that's where I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna run, 2 to 4 miles. That's it. 5K. That's my sweet spot. Like, that's perfect. You know, sometimes if I'm feeling spunky, I'll run 5 miles, but very rarely these days. Um, so, and I have a loop that I absolutely love in the forest. And so it's like, it's beautiful. Um, yeah. And I mean, I'm back to me again. And I was not sure I would have ever gotten back there. If you would have asked me back in October, November last year, I would have been like, I can't even see myself function in 2 months.
and, it must feel good to feel back to yourself
Mm-hmm.
as
It
far as
does.
this has been going on since 2019.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
so,
I
like,
mean,
it's been a journey.
yeah, yeah, it's been a rough 6 years for sure. Um, but I really do think that now I've I finally, I think, broke through that misconception of saturated fat is bad, because I started really digging in and doing research and finding like Nick Norowitz. He's amazing the way he explains things to us, you know, at least me, the layman. And he's super smart, but he can explain it to, you know, for us to understand it kind of thing. And so I've been watching a ton of his videos, and he is a lean mass hyper responder. And I heard that from my metabolic doctor that I'm a lean mass hyper responder because of my blood work. And I didn't understand what that meant. And Nick Norowitz actually came out with a video recently explaining what that is. And I was like, oh, that's exactly what my blood work looked like, like the markers and stuff. And so I'm like, that explains it. And then he really does explain why the LDL is not the main focus. Even ApoB is not a good marker for cardiac health and that kind of stuff. And so I'm I'm really kind of like, all right, I'm in this. I got this. And so I eat the way I feel good, and I don't guilt myself. Like I don't second guess myself anymore for eating this way.
Nice. So Brenda, if someone showed some interest in giving carnivore a try and they came and said to you, "What do I do? I'm gonna do it for 90 days." Based on the experience you've had, would you tell them to rip the Band-Aid off and jump in, or
I
transition it slowly?
I think it depends on the situation. Like if you are having a medical crisis, I would say just rip the Band-Aid off. But if you are just wanting to do it for health, like you're already, you know, quote unquote healthy, but you just want to get healthier, then I would say just slowly transition. Maybe go keto, see how that feels, and then go to carnivore. Because there can be some, there can be consequences to just dive right into carnivore, especially if you're doing from standard American diet. I mean, you're going to feel like absolute crap for at least 2 to 3 weeks because you're basically going through detox. So, and even me going from keto to carnivore this recent time around, I was telling my husband, I'm like, I'm having the weirdest dreams. I'm having dreams where I'm just sitting there eating donuts and diving into ice cream and arguing with somebody that I need pancakes and no, I can't have and it's like I didn't even eat sugar. I maybe had like blueberries now and then, but just the trace amounts of sugars that's in the vegetables and in those blueberries sparked we call them my sugar monsters. And I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah. And, for when someone experiences that kind of thing for the first time, it can be scary and make them go, "Oh, no, that's it. I'm just gonna throw the towel in. I'm going back to eating normally."
Yeah, yeah. And for someone like me who was raised in the 80s, raised in the saturated fat's bad, you have to eat this fake margarine butter crap. And I've always had an issue with dairy. So I was very excited when all the, alternatives to dairy came out. But I didn't realize how sick I was actually getting by eating those. And I really feel like I think my brain tumor was from long-term just sugar and seed oils. That's where I personally feel my brain tumor came from. It's just this long-term. I mean, I basically was eating, as a kid, I was eating, Captain Crunch and Sugar Smacks and, all this very, very sugary. And then if my dad or something gave me, regular Cheerios, I would pour like a ton of honey on top of it. And, not the good honey, the honey that came from the little bear. Um, so yeah, that was hard for me.
Mm,
Like I definitely had some major issues with the sugar
yeah.
factor.
As that kind of talking about the cereal that resonates with me. I grew up in the 80s and, yeah, eating, eating cereal that was already sugary and
Mhm.
tipping a tablespoon of sugar over the top of it before you ate it because it just wasn't sugary enough, and then having
Yes.
the sugar floating around in the milk at the end. It's just thinking about it now, it's just disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, now thinking about it, I'm like, "Oh my god." I mean, when I first met my husband, our first date, I remember this. I got an iced tea, and I was literally grabbing the sugar packets and dumping in my iced tea. And I think I had about that thick of sugar on the bottom of my iced tea. And he just looks at me and he's like, "Would you like some tea with your sugar?" Like holy. And I thought that was normal because that's how my aunt does the same thing. She still to this day does that. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we actually my mom's sister and her husband They came and visited us when I was doing the first time around my 90-day carnivore. And they were like, "Oh my God, you look amazing." Because they've seen me, through all the years. And they're like, "You've never looked so good in your life. What are you doing?" So I just told him, and then I fed him, the way I eat for dinner. And I think it was a couple weeks later, they're like, "Have you heard of Dr. Barry?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm part of his." And now they are ketovore. Like, they are full blown ketovore. They have lost so much weight. Like, my uncle, he was always a skinny guy, but he was one of those that had the the beer belly, and it was all visceral fat. And his gone. It is gone. And they feel so much better. And my aunt was she needed knee replacement surgery. She's just bone on bone. No pain. None.
That's fantastic. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Uh,
So I loved it.
yeah. Um, so if people want to reach out to you, Brenda, what's the best way of finding you online or getting in contact?
I think the best way is through my email. I think it's Brenda Sowers at braintumorcompanions.org. I'm on the board of Brain Tumor Companions, and they have been my godsend. We've just recently, a year ago, became a nonprofit, and so we're definitely, you know, raising funds and helping and getting the word out there about brain tumors and brain cancer. So that's the primary way, and then I'm also on Instagram, which is I think it's bsowers80. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Those are the two I'm really active on.
Yeah, no worries. I'll link to both of those in the show notes.
Okay.
Brenda, thank you so much for coming back on and letting us know how things are going. I really
Yeah.
appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you.